Thank you, Abhishek and Mithun. Thank you for inviting me. Half my life I spent using hand drill and Manman, and now I'm supposed to give a lecture on this. Anyway, thank you very much. I learned so many things while making this lecture. To get an ideal saw or an ideal drill is a boon to any orthopedic surgeon right now. Just a few declarations. There are so many companies here. I have not received any money from anything. No funding. This is all whatever representations inside you will see, or there might be names appearing. I have not received any funding, and this is just for scientific purposes. I have used the names. Orthopedics and drill, it's a combined dance. We all play in the OTs, and to get a good result, particularly now that we are using long locking plates, lots of osteotomies and things we do, a power tool is very essential to get a good result. The skill and experience curve for an orthopedic surgery is very extensive, and therefore it's very important to choose a good drill and a good saw. There are hazards of drilling and saws. Collateral damage is always there. I know of patients who was doing, a surgeon was doing the femoral for the femoral cut. He knocked off the popliteal artery because he went through the posterior side of the femur. So the damages happen, the hazards are there, but it's very important that we use these drills so that we get good results, and surgery is easier if we use these power tools. Power tool types, they are orthopedic reamers, orthopedic power instruments for large bones, for small bones, high-speed drills you have now, and broadly, if you want to divide them, they can be electric power instruments, pneumatic or air drill system, which was very popular in the last decade or maybe two, although I was still using hand drill in Manman. And then there are now the present generation power with batteries, which we have lithium batteries, which are very easy to use and easy to maneuver. So benefits, I'm sure all of you know, they perform surgery precisely, efficiently, used in almost every aspect of orthopedic surgery. It causes, but as I told you, there are hazards while using. Every time you make a drill inside, there are small cracks developing. So there may be other damages like apoptosis, osteocyte death, and then there is thermal necrosis. So that is part of the game. So thermal necrosis is one of the common damages what we are worried about. So, but there is no human study. There is no human study. It has been. There are studies on porcine specimens on animal where around 47 to 50 degrees thermal heat can cause necrosis, and which ultimately in humans might mean loosening or other damages, failure of implants. So, but there are, as I told you, there are no human studies. The exact threshold temperature for death of an osteohuman cortical bone is not known, but overheating is an issue, and we have to be worried about that. There are important parameters for these temperature rise, which is the drill diameter, drill rotational speed, axial drilling forces, cortex thickness. So all these parameters are there, and it's very important for the companies as well as for us to be aware of these things so that we have an ideal drill and an ideal power tool. So drill speed, there are studies where the low RPM, we were worried about the low RPM, but now there are enough papers where they say that high speed drills, they cause less necrosis. So we should use high speed drills instead of low speed drills. Like in hand drills, we had problems of generating a lot of speed, even in electric drills where the RPM is low. Now it has been proved, there are so many papers, in fact that's what I learned during this, that with high speed drills there is less chances of necrosis and there is no significant increase in temperature of the bone. So conventional drill bits, majority of the recommend studies, as I told you, recommend high speed and high speed drills, and there are papers which you will probably get from the literature that high speed drill is the drill which should be used. Coolant, there are drills which are available which have internal cooling system, but why I put this slide here is that many of us tend to overlook the irrigation part of the drilling. So it is very important that we irrigate the drill every time we are drilling into the bone, particularly the cortical bone. So there are studies where they have found out that bone debris which collects there, if it is not coming out, that increases the temperature, so chances of thermal necrosis are much higher in such cases. So it's very important that you have constant irrigation while you are drilling a cortical bone. Drilling depth, the increase in temperature is not so important if you are drilling a cortical bone. As I told you, if there is good clearance mechanism in the drill bit what you are using, if the debris is coming out very nicely and you are irrigating it, it doesn't really matter. And when you are using a high-speed drill, the chances of thermal necrosis are much less as compared to a low-speed drill. Pre-drilling, there was a concept that where we should have dual diameter drill bits, like we have a pre-drilling with a smaller diameter and then the actual diameter will come behind it. But it has been now proved that it doesn't give a great advantage as far as thermal necrosis is concerned. But if you really want the ease of drill, it might be a little easier if you have a sort of a dual drill bit. Certain things like wear of the drill bit, if you are using a very old, many times used drill bit, so ensure that your drill bit is changed very frequently. Don't use the same drill bit. These companies tend to give you the same drill bit over and over again, and that is probably the reason why you are causing more thermal necrosis, more chances of collateral damage with these drill bits. So ideal drill, it has been more than a half a century now that these investigations on bone drilling is carried out, but we are still not able to find an ideal drill bit. So only thing is I can say from the literature as well as from our use, now we are using these Midas Rex systems and all that. So the high speed drilling is a good way to use a drill bit, so rather than the low speed drills. So in summary, high speed irrigation and two-phase drill bits, not though I should say put it in the borderline, whether you can use a true bit. Of course, you may not get it also, but then if you have access, it doesn't really make a great difference, except that in thick cortical bones, you might use a two-phase drill bit. So coming to the systems, basically, which system you should use. You have those wired systems, what I told you, we have grown up with those. We have used hand drills, and then we promoted ourselves to the Manman system. I'm not promoting that right now, but they are the workhorses of our old OTs in last 2 decades. So they are good systems. They have good speeds. They are cheap, but then they have their own limitations, which we'll probably discuss in the next slides. So they give you the modularity. You can use a saw, you can use a drill, you can use a reamer on the same, but of course you have different hand pieces, which is a disadvantage. So you don't have the same hand piece for all the systems, so you have to use different hand piece systems. So then came the air-driven or pneumatic systems, which again in the last decade was very common, but now we have almost everything battery-driven. So I remember I went to a big major hospital where the boss used to come early morning and start the compressor, which looked like your usual regular tire puncture wala compressor. So these were the workhorses, and they would last the whole day, and then and they had good RPM, they had good, and they were used quite extensively. So they have a coupler locking ring, they have a trigger which is a safety trigger, and then they have a safety control switch where so accidentally you might not press it. So and the RPM is around 0 to 250 RPM. It is around 16.9 and this newtons. So the RPM varies with the trigger you press. I just wanted to compare it with, there was a phase when I was in Sion Hospital, we used to get those hardware drills, which are very cheap, around 7,000 to 8,000. You can get it on Amazon, you can get it on Flipkart. So they are very cheap. RPM is almost matching. They have replaceable lithium battery. This is just for the youngsters who probably want to start practice. Only issue is sterility, because you have to use them. You have to use that formalin chamber and then put that in. You cannot autoclave them, although the coupler, the Jacob check now can be removed. It is removable. You can autoclave that, but the whole drill cannot be. So you may use it with the cover, which is stuck in it, and then still use it. The RPM now, these drills are highly sophisticated drills, although very cheap, but they can be used if you have no issues about the sterility, although that is not assured with a formalin tablet or a chamber. So just to compare them, this is the hardware drill, and that is the orthopedic drill. So cost is 7,500. Sorry for the companies here, but there is always a rider there that sterility is an issue. So weight is around 1.5, that is 1.7. RPM is 250 to 1200. Torque is around something like similar. Quick coupling, yes, both can avoid. So sterility is formalin chamber. Cannulated, no. But although some drills now allow cannulation, but not fully, not all the spectrum of cannulation. So service is very cheap, while these charge you a song for this service. They sell you very nicely, but then they are not there for the service. Then the orthopedic, what is now the work, most of the hospitals now use this, almost all the surgeons have now access to this orthopedic battery drill. So the advantages are there are safety mechanisms available, there are modularities there, you can change it from the reamer to the wire chucks. So everything is on the same handle. So you can use a single hand piece, or for a saw at the most you might have two hand pieces. So ideal saw, ergonomically it should be efficient design, neutral wrist position. You should not get tired while you are using drills. If you are using a long locking plate, you will get tired. Less noisy, less vibration, precise predictable cut, efficient and quick locking mechanisms, and handpiece cleaning should be easy. There should be some roughness in the handpiece so that it not slip. Even some very expensive handpieces are slippery, so they tend to fall from your hand. And the power buttons should be controlled. You should be able to control the torque. It should not be single RPM at all the presses of the button. Then coming to saw blades, it's very important if you have a good saw but you don't have a good saw blade. So you have to choose your saw blades. So saw blades, they depend on the anatomy of the blade. So you should have a tooth. What is the most important part is the teeth. So tooth formations, they are from different variations. So for a clean, smooth cut in a TKR where you need every millimeter is counted, you need to have, so you have to choose your, so this is all to make you aware, because these companies, they get you only one set of blades, so as you start getting familiar with these things, you'll probably able to tell them that I want this blade. So as you have a thinner spectrum, I don't know whether you can see it very clearly. So as you go through the angle of the tooth, the thickness of the tooth, the amount of bone it cuts, it will vary. So in an osteotomy or in a TKR, the amount of cut becomes very important in such cases. So now you have available disposable power tools also. So very soon you might see these. So you have a drill and a saw which is disposable. Of course, for our part of the world, it might be a distant dream. So future outlook, important surgeons, meticulous selection of the accurate device should drive the development of, so the companies, we should force them to keep on developing these devices so that we have the right thing in our hands. So as I told you, in just my 20 years of career, the things have changed so radically. I have used the hand drill, and when I shifted from Sion to Nair, I was told that the hand drill is the most important because this is what you will get in the practice. So it was difficult to get a Manman that time. So now you have everything available. So it is very important that we have the awareness of these tools, and so that we can choose the right tool. And I thank Abhishek and Miten to have such course so that youngsters get to know availability and the prospects they have. So an ideal power tool should be an educated choice. So that's why I said you should know the ergonomics, you should get the feel of these devices, so that forces you to choose the right device, and companies to keep on innovating for the right device. But it should be value based, so that you can give the best to your patient. And now in our country, we have to have cost also as a very important issue. So we should have a device which should be cheap and also effective as we have. Thank you very much.